After I got out of college, some of us who had been in a theater company together called Lambs Players wanted to do something at the Minnesota Renaissance Festival, which is where we were. And so we decided to just go out and tell a story and use audience members as characters of the story and try it. And if it worked, we'd keep it. If it didn't work, we might keep it or throw it away, and formed SAC Theater. So we rapidly were asked to come to festivals all over the country, and we were touring, and folks creating Epcot Center saw us and asked if we would come and do something, audition to perform at the Italy Pavilion like a commedia troupe, traveling troupe of actors. So we did. They invited us to come down, and they gave us a 3-month contract for the opening of Epcot Center. We figured we'd be here for a while, so we moved 9 people here. Within a month and a half, they had asked us to do a troupe in the United Kingdom Pavilion as well, so we moved another 9 people here, and had a 7-year history of performing in the first 7 years at Epcot Center and growing and developing different things with Walt Disney. So that was what brought us to Orlando. When we got to Orlando, we also looked around to say, what's our new home? What is it? We were trained in theater, and there wasn't a lot of theater here at the time. There was the what's called the Civic Theater, which I went to, and it was like, everybody here has gray hair. What am I doing in this audience? So we just started developing plans to start a repertory theater, as opposed to what we did was a hybrid genre that we had developed, this audience interactive thing. So we formed the Orlando Theater Project and began looking for places to perform, which wasn't easy. There were not a lot of spaces, at least that we could afford. We found an old power plant on Lake Ivanhoe that OUC was kind of using for a warehouse. We went to OUC and to the city and said, hey, this should become an art center, which eventually it did, and became a home of the Orlando Opera and the Orlando Ballet for many years. The theater never actually got into there, although we had initiated the idea. And then the Orlando Theater Project became the host for the Orlando Fringe Festival. We had also then, I took a troupe to the Granddaddy Fringe Festival in Edinburgh, Scotland, and had a great experience. And then we started performing at Fringe festivals across Canada, where they were, and said, we should create one here. We have been involved in management of Renaissance festivals. We've performed at festivals for a decade. And so we went to Downtown Development Board and people and said, we want to create this festival for 10 days. Downtown, we're going to take empty storefronts and make them into theaters and go from noon until after midnight. And they said, what are you, crazy? How about doing it like one weekend? I'm like, no, if we're going to turn an empty storefront into a theater and people are going to come from other places to perform, we've got to do it for a while to make it worthwhile. Like, well, okay, kind of crazy. I don't know if it's going to work, but we did it. And when we would have on Friday at 1 p.m, a line of people lined up to get into a play, or at 12:30 at night waiting to get into a play, it was pretty exciting. When we came to Orlando, I think it was at a really wonderful time where a small community had been here for many years, but it was rapidly expanding with Epcot opening and more theme parks opening. They were bringing lots of trained artists in all kinds of disciplines to the area, sometimes letting them go, and they're deciding to stay around because it's nice weather. UCF, which was a pretty new university, only created in the 60s, was getting a better theater department and arts department and graduating people that were trained. And thirdly, when the Fringe Festival came, it was a place that people could produce whatever they wanted to do. They didn't have to wait for the Civic Theater or somebody else to create an opportunity. They could create their own opportunities. So I think the convergence of those 3 things, of the the hospitality industry, theme parks bringing artists here, UCF growing to be the second largest university in the country, and the Fringe Festival really opened people's minds. So soon, all kinds of people were creating theater and finding their own places to perform and creating new little theaters, and it just grew rapidly. Traditionally in the arts, in theater, which was my main area of training, you audition, and you audition, and you audition, and you audition, and sometimes you get cast, and it's a very unstable lifestyle, insecure, but that's the lifestyle. And I've done some of that, but mostly in my life, I created my own opportunities. I figured out where there was a need and didn't wait for somebody else to decide to fill it, but created it ourselves. Like with the Orlando Theater Project or SAC Theater or the Fringe Festival. We also early on created a talent agency, the Sakowitz Group. So I went and studied what does it take to be an agent and got our license and moved forward with that. But that didn't really go over, and we closed it. And that's part of that kind of life. When you're going to create something, you might create several things that don't work, that fail. Failure is okay. Failure is what you learn from. So that was part of my story, was trying different things and seeing what worked. So for 21 years, I helped manage SAC and was a part owner of SAC. And it was a platform for me to be able to explore many other things like the Fringe Festival, helping get that started, Orlando Theater Project, etc. We would occasionally bring in a consultant to do organizational development. And he led us through an exercise where we did some envisioning. And the vision I had was of this person flying down into a meadow and people from the village coming out and creating an event and got them more close together and more loving, and went back to their village as more happy and friendly community. And then I flew off. So my understanding of that for myself was that I wasn't really interested in building an empire where I own a bunch of stuff. I really was interested in creating events that enliven people. That's kind of my life goal, to create dynamic events that enliven people. So about that same time, the Sentinel, Orlando Sentinel, was running some articles about the need of a theater district or theater community to come together. And I went to the meeting and kind of felt like this is my new calling, to work on this thing. And I got some of my friends together and said, hey, I'm thinking about leaving SAC after 21 years. What do you think? And we prayed about it together, and they said, yeah, I think that's a good idea. So I told SAC that I was planning to leave SAC and go work for this new organization that was just being formed, the Central Florida Theater Alliance, although there wasn't a position, they didn't have any money, and they hadn't advertised, and they hadn't interviewed, but within 6 months, that's what happened. Did a national search, and I was hired to be the director of the Central Florida Theater Alliance, which became the Central Florida Performing Arts Alliance, which became the Arts and Cultural Alliance, which merged into United Arts as their marketing department. So I did that for 4 years, trying to help lay the foundation for our theater and performing arts community to grow and foster. And then Orange County had a task force on arts and cultural affairs. And so I was like, what are they doing? Who are they? And I kept sticking my nose in and going to their meetings, and they were recommending to create an Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs and hire somebody and have a Arts and Cultural Affairs Advisory Council and set aside a portion of the tourist development tax. So I thought, we just don't need another bureaucrat. I probably said that to someone. They said, well, why don't you do it? I'm like, okay. So I applied and was hired to create the Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs in 2001, and was given a pretty broad or open format. I had to oversee this funding that was going to be coming. That was right after 9/11, so the funding was not what they thought it would be, and it was much less that first few years than had been planned. But other than that, I could pretty much do whatever. And so I have been fortunate to have a job where I get to create things that I feel need to be done to move our community forward and then work on them. So it's been great. One experience of moving on, even though the situation wasn't ideal, was one of my most rewarding experiences. When we were looking at the old warehouse on Lake Ivanhoe that would eventually become the Dr. Phillips Center for the Performing Arts, the first one on Lake Ivanhoe, we decided to produce a production of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol in the building. So there was no heat, anything like that, which was great. We actually took the audience, told them, feel free to bring blankets. We're going to take a cold industrial building, kind of like Scrooge was a cold businessman, and turn it into a warm place, just like the story shows the evolution of Scrooge into a caring human being. So it was a very creative production. The audience moved at some points through the building. Ghosts came up spiral staircases and came flying in on a slide to life and various things. Well, there were performances on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And on Christmas Eve, I was at my house preparing for a party, some people coming over. I got a call from the stage manager that the actor who was playing the ghost that came in on the slide for life had fallen, crash onto the floor with chains around him. It was Marley's ghost. And they'd canceled the second show that night, and he had been taken to the hospital, and he'd actually fractured his heel bone a little bit. So we had two performances the next day. The one in the afternoon was didn't really have many paying customers, but we had invited a number of people from the Coalition for the Homeless, so homeless folks coming. So I went on and did that part in the show, and we did both performances and closed out the production. The stage manager would not let me do the slide for life. We had to make a change around. He didn't want to experience that again, although I really wanted to do that part. But we kept on. We found a way to persevere in that experience. First of all, making that place a place where we could do the show, which involved getting a certificate of occupancy, which we had to put up fire barriers and lots of stuff that was a little beyond me. We put up a big sign on the roof. I'm up there with canvas flapping, and this was in the days before you had little cell phones, but there were some. They were a big box, and I think I had a cell phone we rented, and it was like $6 a minute or something like that. It was incredibly expensive, but we didn't have an office. It was just us there, me painting signs and putting up sheetrock and getting the certificate of occupancy, getting a proclamation from the mayor to make it Christmas Carol Day, and putting that up by the sheetrock when the inspector came by. Hopefully that would let him know that, yes, you really should approve whatever we've done, because it's the mayor's proclamation of the day. So the point is, troubles will come, and you just try to find a way to get around them. Sometimes it's a stop, but before you decide that that's a no-go, first explore all kinds of options. So that's what I've done for my life, and I'm stronger because of it.
Well, ever since I was a little girl, I wanted to be a fashion designer. And I was always into beauty, healthcare, not healthcare, but facials and manicures and all about my internal health and external beauty, however I could, manifest it with makeup, skincare, or just being creative and having fun. And I always, therefore, wanted to be a fashion designer. And I ended up in New York City, went straight to FIT right out of high school, and obtained a degree in fashion design and ended up working in cosmetics. I loved fashion design, but minimum wage, it wasn't cutting it in New York City. So I ended up in the cosmetics industry and loved it. Ended up coming up with my own brand after rising to a VP of product development position with a big cosmetics house called Naomi Sims back in the 80s, about 87. But then I ended up branching off and leaving New York and starting my own line. And it was called Universal Colors Cosmetics. And that was really the epitome of who I was. I thought that Universal Colors kind of was an example of how I felt inside and about the world, that beauty was universal. And I wanted to have a line that would address the specific needs of ethnic women, but by default, that includes everybody. And so that was my heart, that was my soul, that was who I was. And I never thought that there would be anything else, because I worked all of my life to come to that point, and I felt like this was an example of who I was and a reflection of what I wanted to be and what I wanted to accomplish in the world, was to kind of set an even playing field for all women by helping them obtain their best look with the best quality cosmetics. So what else could there be? I finally made it. And my first ad was an example of my exuberance for what I had accomplished. And so there were a lot of pitfalls before I got there. But once I got there, I thought, this is it, and I'm going to make it happen, because after all, I had become vice president of product development for a cosmetics company. Why couldn't I have my own brand? I knew everything that I thought that I needed to know. But it's not necessarily where I ended up. But if you were to tell me back then that I would be in the healthcare industry, I would have laughed. There was no way that I could be doing anything else, because look what I had accomplished. I was here. And I got a dermatologist recommended seal of approval. I was the products were used on Broadway on The Lion King. Okay, so the supervisor of makeup was so enamored with my product, she said not another product in New York City or anywhere in the world was a better foundation than my product. How could I fail? I was on Shop at Home Network, launched the first cosmetics line on Shop at Home, which was a coins type of trading, shopping network. It wasn't about beauty or health or glamour. It was about coins, but they took that chance with me because I sold it to them. That was my in. It was much more competitive to get on the QVC. I had a connection there that said, okay, you can come in and see if you can pitch it to us. And I did, and I got on. I spent $2,000 on my outfit. I knew this was going to be it. And after that, I had reps all over the country. People were using it in LA. There were celebrities using it. How could there ever be anything else other than Universal Colors for me? I was Universal Colors. Universal Colors was me. But then, this was before the social media age, and there were a lot of obstacles. And even though I was on the shelf in a store called Douglas, Douglas is like a Sephora, but it's more in Europe and all over the world. And they only had a few locations in the U.S., maybe 10 or 15. And but I was in Douglas, and my idea was to get into all the Douglases. Why not? I did well in D.C. and Douglas, so why couldn't I do well in the other stores? But then, finances. Where are you going to get the money to make all these products? How are you going to get the money for all of the marketing to sustain that competitive edge? And I wasn't good at raising money. I had too much pride. I didn't know how to go out and ask as hard as I needed to ask. And so I had to make a decision. And my husband at that point was like, you got to do something else. You got to let it go. And I couldn't see letting it go because I felt like, well, this is who I am. But that's like committing suicide. This is who I am. How many people can say that they created their own cosmetics line, got it in stores, it was on TV, magazines, the Washington Post, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, LA Times, all of the magazines and newspapers. This is it. But when it comes down to dollars and cents, if you don't have the money to sustain a business, that means that, well, you're going to have to make a decision. And so I decided to let it go and thought that it was the end of the world for me because this is who I was. But then I realized, well, I learned an awful lot about marketing. I learned an awful lot about supply chain. I learned that no matter how good a product is, it doesn't really make any difference. You have to know how to get it from point A to point B. And you have to be able to sustain that and finance that. And so even though it was the best thing since sliced bread as far as I was concerned and as far as other people were concerned, I wish I had all of the letters and all of the accolades in front of me to share with you. But that's not necessarily enough. You can have a bad product and it can be very successful if you get it into the supply chain. So I learned that, and I learned how to deal with China. I learned how to import. I learned how to negotiate contracts. I learned how to be thick-skinned, and I learned how to have patience. So I started working on that plan in 1996 or so. And then really had it in my heart since 91. But then really hardcore started working on my business plan, doing all the research and testing the products and everything, and launched in 1999. Now, most people think that they can start a business and it's going to make it next year. In 2 years, you're going to be rich. But after you go through that process and realize that that's not the case, that it takes an awful lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and that you need to put the time into developing a plan. And even still, it doesn't mean it's going to work. It doesn't mean that you're going to make it. But so I learned to have thick skin, and I learned how to have patience, and that allowed me to take all of that experience and move it to the next venture. It also allowed me to understand marketing and how to solve problems, how to solve people's problems, how to solve the buyer's problems, not the end user, but there's a buyer that allows you to get in the store. How do you solve their problems? How do you perfect R&D? How do you perfect the product until it's good enough to satisfy the end user? All these things that you learn, you can apply to any business. So I didn't know that. I thought it was all about, it's not all about the product. It's all about solving people's problems. And when you learn that you can solve others' problems, then you can become a happy person. You can realize I can do anything. And it doesn't have to be with cosmetics. It doesn't have to be with hair care. It doesn't have to be with skincare. It doesn't have to be fashion. There are other problems and sometimes bigger problems out there that need to be solved. So it just so happened that I took that skill set of understanding how to solve problems and networking and negotiating. It helped me learn how to drive business in another market. So I had the opportunity to get into healthcare industry. I helped my husband with his company, and I wasn't getting paid. I just used my marketing savvy. And then it allowed me to see that this can make me happy, because it wasn't necessarily the product of the cosmetics that made me happy. It was helping other people and solving problems and feeling rewarded for my knowledge and my expertise. So I learned how to have a new expertise. But the core expertise was supply chain. How do you manage getting a product into supply chain? So if you can take what you know and you can appreciate it and embrace it, then you can apply what you know to any and everything. How you relate to people, how you solve problems, how you get yourself out of a rut, how to have patience, and how to realize that if you have all of your skills and nobody else can take those skills from you, you have all those skills. That's something that you earned. You might as well apply it to something else, because you don't know what the fruits of all your old labor You don't know what that's going to blossom into. So now I have customers, I have employees, I have a thriving business, and I've learned how to be creative and be resourceful. So I turned $0 into a multi-million-dollar company with $160,000 startup capital. So I wrote a business plan, but I had experience writing a business plan before. So now I knew how to write one with a little bit more expertise. And anything that I didn't know, I went and I got help doing. And then when I was able to raise the money and start that business, how then do you get it from here to there? Well, all of the past experience, living in New York City as a young teenager, going to college, beating the pavement, living off of minimum wage, and learning how to transform all of my talents into something that was creative and that generated revenue for myself. I learned how to take something from nothing and blossom it into something that was rewarding, satisfying, helpful, and now I'm a job creator. It wasn't just about universal colors, and it wasn't just about the glamour and what I thought I was, but I've become a stronger person, resilient, patient, and a lot less egotistical. Because I can think back to the day at Universal Colors and how I might have come across as pompous sometimes. I didn't have the same struggle. I didn't see something bottom out yet. So here it is. I thought I was a star. I was on TV, and it was all glamorous, and everybody thought that I was so fabulous. And so you start to think that, yeah, you are fabulous, but you know what? You can break too. Something can happen. You can get sick, your company can get taken away from you, or you can lose it. You might not make it. You might not be as successful as you want to be. But that doesn't define you. And Universal Colors didn't define me, obviously, because it might have been hard, but I got through it. And I was able to apply what I learned to something else. And along the way, what have I accomplished? I stuck to my guns, and I completed my MBA at Rollins, and that was something that was a feat because I was a creative person, not a numbers person. But I learned how to be good with numbers, good enough so that I can talk to a board and talk in an educated fashion about finances and about projections and about losses and about my P&L and about my balance sheet and about how I was going to get from $500,000 a year in sales to $1 million, how I was going to get from $1 million a year to $2 million in revenue, and how I planned on achieving scale. And so you learn all of these things because you want to, because you have the ability to, and because you know that everything that you did in the past is your foundation. That's all it is. No matter how successful you might be, that's only your foundation. Because you never know, the strength, the courage, the power that you really have until you fall. And when you do, and you rise up and get back up, and you accomplish even greater things, it might not be in the business that you want to be. I'm designing disposable medical apparel. That is not sexy. That is not sexy. That is not, at FIT I was designing lingerie. Now I'm designing disposable lab coats. But guess what? Those disposable lab coats can save lives because they're used in a sterile environment. And when you go to the hospital and you get that IV is made in a sterile environment. And I am partially responsible for creating that environment with the company that I run. So we build clean rooms. We also supply the medical devices and supplies that are used in those clean rooms. So maybe before I was making people more beautiful, but now I'm saving lives. Indirectly, but I'm saving lives. And this is something that anybody can do. You can fall on your face, you can bottom out, but you can always rise up and become a lot greater. And I feel that if I hadn't gone through that with Universal Colors, I wouldn't be as humble, I wouldn't be as generous. Yes, was I a giving person? Of course, but when you fall then you appreciate all of your blessings and all of your gifts greater than you ever would have imagined that you had in the past. So I don't know if that explains where I am enough, because I feel like I'm growing every day. I have insecurities and down days and weaknesses, and I have things that I strive to, and I feel like I haven't accomplished anywhere near what I need to. So when I got an invitation, I got a notification that I was going to be honored in this type of arena, I didn't even want to do it. I thought, well, I don't deserve this. Why should I? Why? There are people that do a lot more than I do, and there are a lot of things that I want to accomplish. But sometimes I have to sit back and say, well, I do have employees. I create some jobs. That's pretty good. I'm on the board for the Boys and Girls Club, and it's, my heart is there. And I think that I might be helping some children by doing that. And guess what? Maybe I'm inspiring other people to give back. Maybe I'm encouraging other people, even if they don't have the time. This is a great way that they can help the community, even if they feel like they don't know what to do. So you don't know how you impact other people's lives. And I know that my things that happened to me in the past with my company and not making that the success that I wanted it to be, at least I can say that I did it. I had a dream to start a cosmetics company, and I achieved that dream. So even though it wasn't, in every department store, and it does not exist to this day, I wouldn't be who I am if I hadn't stuck to my guns, pursued my dreams, and tried, because that gave me the ability to do what I'm doing now. That dream of having a cosmetics company, I did it. Is it here today? It isn't, but it's in my heart. And if you Google it, you might be able to find some old articles. But that only shows you that, I'm serious when I say that I'm going to do something. And I think that if in our hearts we can be serious about who we are, and we can try to strive forward and try our best to exude that as long as we know that doesn't define us, it's just a piece of time. It's just who we are for the moment, and we can give the world all that we are, but it doesn't mean that if we don't succeed at that we're a failure. In my past, I've created Universal Colors Cosmetics. I've created Carter Health Disposables. But in all that I've created me.
Bushman, number one, was born in London, England. At the age of 1, was obviously taken back to Nigeria, the motherland. I'm from Nigeria. I stayed, I would say, till the age of 21 before coming back myself to London. And from London to America. From America, I'm sitting on the hot seat with Michelle Hastings. It's been a wonderful, wonderful engaging moment. I think having to have this idea of the incredible love for people, and that has given me the opportunity to want to be able to bring us all together and be able to celebrate us as a people. And for me, it's been all people, because we're all citizens of the world. It's not a white or black, yellow, green. It's just all are welcome. And I think it probably reminiscent over the name Bushman himself, which means to me a free-spirited person. So we are the people of the world, and that energy is what I bring, and I think it's been well received and embraced by all. So I'm excited. I'm an artist, and my way of telling my story, it's by relating it back to the motherland where my beginnings came and where my parents are from. And being an artist has been a way of me telling stories and having the people of the world, so to speak, because America is an embodiment of the people of the world, to be able to relate and see and hear my story. So I tell story by way of my art. And I've been fortunate enough to have my pieces sold out of one of the most wonderful companies of the world, which is the Disney World. So my work is out of there, and it's been a wonderful pleasure, and I'm grateful to them for that. I think my story having to come about Three Mask, which is my African store, the story it's quite an interesting one on its own, because I've always loved to draw, all the way from Nigeria, and I haven't gone to America. I'd said to myself, I need to be able to have an African store that relates to items from home, and then having that African store, me being a self-taught artist, I have thought the idea would be for me to sell the artifacts from home while I occupy my time by drawing in the store or by painting in the store while I receive my guest. So for me not to be bored, the idea would be I will be doing some paintings or whatnot, which is what I love to do. And my second love now will bring about the first love, which is selling the artifacts from home. So while doing that, obviously it come to light that my work could actually sell as well as the products from home. So I'm grateful for that. And like I said again, I would thank Disney again for bringing it all out in the open. Well, I was comfortable at my old address, which is downtown Orlando, West Church Street to be precise. But obviously the city and the magic needed the land right in front of us. So for that reason, all the stores in our building has to move. And the move has been a wonderful blessing in disguise, because where I am right now is much larger than my previous address. And with having that store, so much happens. So much happens from me having to create something called Art Talk, and that brings about people to be able to come in and not only facilitate a venue for the artists in Orlando to sell their work, but also vendors do come around and be able to sell their products as well, to mainly handcrafted products. So it has been a home of more of a family affair where people come in, get together, we eat, we drink, we socialize, we network. It's been a beautiful thing to have happened. So I thank the city and I thank the magic for the move, because you really have to thank those who facilitate things to you. You thanks receives more. So I'm thankful and grateful for the move, and it has been a wonderful blessing in disguise. So I thank Orlando. We have this wonderful chair or couch, which has been termed the famous couch in Orlando, Florida. And the most wonderful thing about that couch is everybody in the world, so to speak, when they come to Orlando, would love to come in and sit on the most famous couch in Orlando. It has brought people together. I think its magical effect is it brings smiles to your face once you sit on it. You look the most prettiest when you sit on it. So, and it brings about the Africa in all of us when you sit on it. So I employ those who have not come to sit on the couch to do so, because it is the most famous couch in Orlando, Florida. Art in itself, it's a God-given talent. But also, while we have that talent, we also have to be able to market art. it's very difficult to be able to do both, being the artist and being the marketer of the business. But I think the art talk not only receives people, but it brings about artists as well too. And not only do you sell your work at Art Talk, that you keep all proceeds, but you also learn from those who have done it before, those who have been artists themselves and been able to make a living out of that art. So now what we then do is be able to pass those experiences on to up-and-coming artists and be able to help them. Because without having to help them, most of them would think the gift that they were given were just a gift. But they need to be able to make a living out of that gift. And the only way you could do that is by being able to have an experience on how to market your work. So Art Talk itself is not just about artists gathering to make sales of their work, but also to be able to lecture and educate those who are already artists and would like to sell their work.
When I think about the reality of how New Image came about, even I sometimes am amazed. My father moved this church from the Winter Park area, and at the time, he felt that God was leading him to speak and do more outreach work in the Paramore community. And I hated everything about Paramore. I kicked, I screamed, I begged him not to go. And in reality, I did not know that that was the very thing that was going to end up changing my life. So I was 21, college student, not sure exactly what I was going to do with my life, who I was, what I was supposed to become, what was my purpose, and how was I going to get there. And I just remember this process of going down to Paramore to help him clean up. And there were a couple of kids that were playing in and out of the street. And at the time, without even thinking, they were in this grocery basket, and they were pushing this grocery basket into the street, watching cars swerve. And I just yelled out, "Hey, what are you doing?" And those kids, that very moment, came over, and one of the little boys cussed me out like I would never believe. And I invited them inside my father's church. We played the only game that we had at the time, which was a game of Monopoly. And we had the time of our lives, and it was just so strange because 2 days later, my dad called and said, "Hey, those kids that you were playing with, they're back, and they're asking for you." And here I was thinking, asking for me? Why? And he said, "I don't know, they're asking." So without even thinking, I went down to play with the kids for a second day, and then a third day, and then a fourth day. So I was a college student. I was actually in the criminal justice field. In my mind, I wanted to be either one or two things, a SWAT team member or a movie star. So I was trying to find my path, trying to find my way, trying to find the right directions to get to this. And my purpose was right there in front of me. So I continued to come down every day, had the time of my life with the kids. And before you knew it, they had officially become mine. So when I think about the reality of New Image, it was something that wasn't planned. It wasn't something that I knew I was going to do all of my life. Actually, I said I was going to do opposite. I said I would never work in ministry and I would never work with youth. But it was that very thing that made me want to get up every morning. It was that very thing that made me feel complete. It was that one very thing where I felt like I was where I was supposed to be. So that's how New Image came about. New Image Youth Center is located in the downtown part of Orlando in a community by the name of Paramore. Now, in 2011, Paramore was ranked as one of the top deadliest cities in Florida. And I questioned God on many occasions, "Are you sure this is where you want me to go?" I tell people all the time that Paramore is not the area that you want to go to and you want to walk your dog freely. It's not the area that you're going to run to as one of your top favorite spots. Now we are in the middle of a lot of transformation. A lot of changes are coming to Paramore. But back in 2004, when New Image was started, Paramore was not that. I wish I could paint a picture for you, but sometimes words can't even describe. But, you know, prostitution, drugs, the highest economic assistance rate is about $12,000 a family for the year annually. And we're talking about high rates of dropouts. We're talking about unemployment. We're talking about dirty neighborhoods. Sometimes even Paramore being known as one of the neighborhoods which was mostly forgotten about. So I tell people all the time that when you're asking for something, you're not sure exactly what you're going to get, but you have to be ready and you have to be equipped for whatever it is that you're about to get into. I can't tell you what that equipment meant for me, but it was a willing heart. And as I began to step out, I can tell you that God provided every tool that I needed for every day that I was there. Paramore is the type of area wherein you can hype, you can motivate, you can inspire your youth to do better, to want better. But in reality, they have to return back home. Sometimes home means no food, no lights, no family, by yourself. Sometimes it means the only hope that you have is returning back to the youth center for the next day. But it is our job at New Image Youth Center is to create a new image and to let them know that they can do whatever it is that their dreams tell them that they can do. It is our job to let them know that I don't care what situation you're in, you're always in a situation where you can give back. And that's what we teach, that no matter how hard it is, no matter how bad it is, no matter sometimes how you feel like you want to give up, that there is a way out. And we're going to help you get there. There's no such thing as giving up on our youth. There's no such thing as he's too bad. There's no such thing as we don't want you. It's you're here for a reason. Now let's make it happen. So very grateful for the process of what the Paramore community has taught me. And I do say process because that is what it is. It's a process. It's a journey. I can figure something out one day, but the next day it may be totally different. So I'm very grateful for this journey. The most amazing process is to know that I was 21 when I started this place. You know, when I often think about it, it scares me. I want people to know that I am very human, very human. And even the process of knowing that I took on such a big responsibility at such an early age is even scary to me. I can remember the process. I can't remember every detail of the process, but I can tell you that it was all worth it. 11 years. So I was 21 years old, and now I'm 33. Let the kids tell it. I'm an old lady now, and it's so amazing because I'm very grateful because I can remember going through the process with them. For instance, a lot of my life was their life. A lot of their life was my life. I graduated with my bachelor's. I went back to school for my master's. And when I did so, all of my youth were right there in the audience for me. I remember giving the speech of my life at the graduation, and I wasn't giving it to the audience who was there, but I was giving it to every one of my children who were sitting out there rooting me on. And then in August of 2015, I finished with my doctorate. A lot of times it was hard. I was a year behind, but I kept going. I wanted to be an example for my youth to let them know that if I can do it, you can do it. And then just to think about the successes that have come throughout the last 11 years that I happen to be the leader of this place that helped lead these successes. 11 years, 18 high school graduates, 9 who are in college. One of my young men was the first young man to leave Paramore in 15 years to make it to Morehouse College. Not only to make it to Morehouse College, but in May of 2015 to graduate from Morehouse College. Every time I say it, I get goosebumps because there were so many times when we didn't know how he was going to stay. And we would actually, raise money, but think that he will have to come back the next year. But graduation day, he and his mother and myself and some other people were there in the audience, and we just cried, just knowing that it was no longer a dream of his, but actual reality. So now he's a PhD student at Auburn University. He's the youngest in the program. And then we have so many other success stories of my young women who are paying their way through college. Class by class because of immigration issues, or even my Akeem who refuses to give up. And although things have just turned out sometimes not in his favor, he has this strength to continue to go. I mean, I know this is what we teach, but it's different when you see it into action. So there are a lot of things that I can say. We have amazing successes, but there are always hard times, and I don't think people understand that, because on the outside, we paint a good picture, and we want people to know that you too can do this, but there are a lot of things that people don't know behind the scenes. There are many days where I cried. There are many days that I didn't think we can make it. I didn't think that no one believed in us enough to even to continue to give or to continue to support our mission. There were times where I felt like giving up. There were times where I decided to give up. And I remember one specific time where my father told me, he said, it was Christmas time one year, he said, Shanta, if things does not happen, if God does not show up for you in 1 week, then I'm going to help you pack everything up. No, I don't know. A lot of people may not know this story, but I said, okay, it's a deal. We shook on it. And I remember that 1 week, my sister was working at Walmart. And my sister's a very friendly person. She was talking to someone, and she ran across a pastor who was doing Christmas toys for kids. She told him about the New Image Youth Center, and this pastor called me, and he supplied Christmas toys for all of my kids in that same week. And to me, that was that aha moment to say, you can't give up. I'm still here. I'm still pushing you. There are other times when I wanted to give up personally. I don't think people understand, but I gave up a lot of my life to do this. I'm not married, don't have any children. I dedicated myself to the children of Paramore, and I became a part of their family. But it's all worth it at the end of the day. I wouldn't trade it for the world. When I look back and I recognize that we have been able to create a legacy, we've been able to create a beacon in this community, that sometimes there were people who believed in us but could not help, and there were times when people did not believe in us and did not help, but some kind of way we kept going. And I often say, was it worth it? But when I look from starting that first summer with 8 children and now servicing 90 youth a year, it even freaks me out. What the heck am I doing? I question myself all the time, but you keep busy. Once you're busy, you're not there to recognize or even see the fear. So don't pay attention to the things that are coming your way or the things that are coming up. I do know that there is a quote that I believe in by, I can't remember the name of the guy who wrote the quote, but it says, start with whatever tools that you have at hand, and as you go on, better tools will come along the way. And that is the truth. Those tools may represent people, they may represent resources, they may represent donations, or they may represent whatever it is that you need at the time. But if you keep going, those things will come along the way. One of the things that people normally ask is, how did you give up basically your life and yourself to do this work, and how long would it go on? And I can't answer that because I don't know, but I can tell you that I often pose the same question to people and said, have you ever thought about waking up one morning, leaving your children and never returning? And they look at me crazy, and they said, of course not. And I said, okay, well then that's exactly how I feel. These kids are officially my kids, and that's like giving up on them. That's like turning your back on them. I have an amazing family, and my family has been a part of this every process. I do think that if I had to do a lot of this alone, that maybe I wouldn't have been able to do it. My boyfriend, my mom, my dad, my sister and brother, when I tell you that they're like the going force behind me, they really are. I think that a lot of people may not understand that you may see me in the limelight, you may see me at an award show, you may see me on the news, you may see me in a newspaper, and everything appears to be okay. But just know that there's always something going on behind the scenes. One of the things that always scared me is about, I guess the more I grew up and started recognizing not-for-profit arena, it was the politics behind it, of just how many people would tell you no, but want you to say certain things in the public, or to act as if they're doing something that they're not. And that became very discouraging for me, because sometimes people were saying they were doing things for us, and I was there struggling, trying to come up with the light bill for the center. But it's very important for you just to stay focused. Whatever that mission is, you remain true to that mission. And of course, in our situation, it's the youth. They are always there. know that sometimes we're closed and the youth will still pop up. So that's how you know it's still time to keep going, still time to keep pushing. And I've even had my personal downfalls. Back in 2014, I was on my way to the youth center to get ready for the Martin Luther King parade on I-4 and was hit by a semi-truck. Now, the craziest thing is at the moment, I literally thought I was dying and knew I was going to die. I had two twins in the back seat, and I just knew the moment that was it. But I remember like questioning God and saying, God, if you're going to take me away from my kids, please don't take me out like this. They will never forgive you. But I stand here before you today and may look like I have no issues, but I have a lot of repercussions because of that. I have dealt with some memory loss. I've dealt with a traumatic brain injury that I'm still getting treatment for. But I can tell you that I know why I'm still here, because my purpose is not done yet. I have not reached my destiny. When people say, how can you go through everything you're going through and still standing, still pushing? And that's because there is someone greater than I that is still pushing me to do bigger and better things. So if I could say anything, this is just the beginning. Don't believe me? Just watch. It is true that people who see the vision will come along the way and join in. One of the most amazing things is we have been able to create this family unit at New Image Youth Center. And this family consists of boys, girls, aunts, uncles, sisters, and brothers. And one of the things that we have proud ourselves in, and which really has set us aside, is the fact that we are a family unit. Our volunteers are part of the family. Our board of directors are part of the family. Everyone who believes in the mission and make it possible is part of the family. And I think this has helped us because it has let the youth know that they're never alone. So no matter what their natural family look like, they have another family that exists. So it's so amazing around holiday time because all of our kids, all of our older kids who have graduated, the ones who are college, the ones who no longer attend, or whatever the case may be, they all come back. And we do this really huge dinner, and we're able to love on each other, and we're able to talk about what we're thankful for. And it amazes me every year how this family keeps growing. Just the pictures of seeing and recognizing over the years how New Image Youth Center has touched so many people is just an amazing feeling that I can't even put into words. So I tell people all the time, yeah, I have done some amazing things for New Image Youth Center, but New Image Youth Center has done some amazing things for me. Through all of the bad, through all of the good, through all of the ups, through all of the downs, I can truly say that I am stronger because of it.